Hello, Year Nines. We're getting towards the end of our business plans project. You've been doing lots of different bits of your business plan, hopefully gradually building up a better idea of how your business will operate. And last week, you should have been doing work on break even. So starting to think about how much money you expect to be able to make from your business and doing some estimates around this. And we're going to be continuing with the financial work this week, thinking about cash flow and how you're going to go about financing your business. So there's three things that you need to do that are all linked to each other this week. Firstly, you need to make estimates of your cash inflows and cash outflows for the first 6 months of your business. Now, you should have already got a number of different figures that will help you to do that because you've thought about your price, you've thought about your costs for your business. So it's not working out things from scratch, but it's putting those into the terms of cash inflows and outflows. From that, you then need to draw up a cash flow forecast. And then after you've drawn up your cash flow forecast, you need to decide how you plan to finance the startup of your business, because that's a really important part of your business plan. In fact, often business plans are drawn up in order to persuade people that you want to help with the finance, for example, banks or potential shareholders, in order to persuade them that it's a worthwhile business to invest in. So, as with the break-even work last week, I'm going to be going through an example using my business of making fudge. So, first of all, a little reminder of what a cash flow forecast is. A cash flow forecast is a table that shows how you think that cash will be flowing in and out of your business over a particular time period, normally thinking in terms of several months. And we've done examples of cash flow forecasts in school earlier on in the year. Here's an example of the cash flow forecast. In fact, that's my cash flow forecast for my fudge business, running from July, in other words, next month, through to the end of the year, through to December. And I want you to do a similar sort of thing for your business, a cash flow forecast starting in July, running through to December. So let's go through this cash flow forecast bit at a time. First of all, we need to remember that I said that I was going to be selling the fudge for £1 for a 100 gram bag. But also I was going to do this special offer of 2 bags for £1.50. And also my break-even point, I said, and I worked out last time, was 192.4 bags of fudge. So in other words, 193 bags of fudge, and I've broken even. Based on my break-even point, I'm saying I'm going to want to try and break even by the second month, by August. I think I can probably manage to sell 100 bags of fudge in July altogether. That's basically, if we're talking about 4 weeks in a month, that's selling 25 bags of fudge a week. That's from a table outside my house, something like that, to passers-by. Hopefully I can do that, particularly if lots of people are buying 2 bags for £1.50. August, I'm hoping to up my sales a little bit. It's summer holidays. Hopefully people be out and about a bit more, so I'm going to aim for 150 in August. September, people are going to be starting to get back to school, get back to work. The weather's not going to be so good, so people aren't going to be out so much. So I'm assuming it's going to drop a little bit then, back down to 100 perhaps. And then as the weather worsens through October and November, perhaps lower sales again. But then we're coming up to Christmas in December. It won't be long before Christmas, believe it or not. And I'm going to do a big push in December to try and sell 200 bags of fudge as Christmas presents for people to buy in December. So that's my planned cash flow forecast. That's what I'm going to aim towards. So that can then help me to work out how much money I'm going to get coming in each month, because based on 75p per bag, in other words, if I assume that every single bag I sell is sold at a price of £1.50 for 2 bags, that's 75p for each bag. So therefore for 100 bags of fudge, that's going to be £75. And you can see that the other figures follow through after that. Now, I've not worked these out using my calculator, I've used Excel formulae like I showed you in class to work out those figures. I've just got in there a formula that says that says that cell multiplied by 0.75. Okay, and then you can see from that I've got my total inflows. Because my only inflow is from selling the fudge, that gives me my total inflows of £75 for July, £112.50 for August, and so on. Okay, so that's the inflows. Now we need to think about the outflows, and there are 3 different outflows I've got. I've got my ingredients that I need to make the fudge. I've got paper bags to put the fudge in, and I've got the various bits of equipment that I need for making the fudge. So we'll go backwards through those. First of all, equipment. I said, if you remember last week, I'm going to buy a pan, I'm going to buy 3 trays to put the fudge in, and I'm going to buy a spatula to help make the fudge and to spread the fudge out in the trays. And that came to a total of £51.95. And I only need to pay that once because I buy that equipment in July, and then that's going to be with me. Then I don't need to buy that equipment again unless I break anything in the process, or in case anything wears out, which it shouldn't do in that 6 months. So that's just an outflow in July. And then you can see that throughout the remaining months, I've not got any outflows for equipment. Of course, if I was wanting to increase my production a lot more, I might want to buy more trays later on. Or I could have decided, for example, just to buy 1 tray in July and then buy extra trays in August, but I've decided to buy it all in one go. Let's look at the ingredients. Okay, so this was from my PowerPoint last week. My ingredients were there, so it was working out at a cost of £3.87 to make a batch of fudge, which was 847 grams of fudge. That's just how it worked out based on the quantities. Therefore, 847 grams of fudge, that's going to be 8.47 bags of fudge for each batch that I make. For 100 bags of fudge, I need to make 11.8 batches of fudge. Well, we'll round that up to 12. That will give me a bit of fudge to eat. And then 12 times that £3.87 figure means that for 100 bags of fudge, that's going to cost me £46.44 to make. So 46.44. Let's put that into the cash flow forecast. So you can see that for July, 100 bags of fudge, ingredients cost 46.44. 150 bags of fudge, that's going to be then 69.66. 100 bags again, 46.44, and then so on, working out for each month my ingredients cost based on how many bags of fudge I'm going to be actually selling that month. Finally, for my outflows, I've got my paper bags. So paper bags, if you remember, were costing £1.95 for 100 bags from eBay. And so that's working out to be about 2p per bag, but I've got to buy them in packs of 100. Okay, now if we add up the figures across the top here, that actually comes to just over 700 bags of fudge altogether. So I'm going to have to buy altogether 800 bags because I can only buy them in packs of 100. So therefore I've decided I'm going to buy 1 pack of 100 in July because that will do my July orders. And that also means I'm not spending too much on bags before I know that this is going to work. And then in August, I'm going to buy another 3 packs, another 300, which will see me through August and September and part of October. But by October, I'm going to have run out of bags again. So then I'm going to buy more bags. And by that point, I've decided I'm going to buy another 4 packs of bags, 400 bags, which will see me through all the way to the end of the year. So I'm spacing it out. And of course, you can space out your payments for things if you want to, or there are things that you might decide to buy all in one go. So those are my different outflows: ingredients, paper bags and equipment. So then I can say my total outflows there, and that's just adding up these figures. And as before, I've not added those up in my head or using a calculator. I've used the Excel functions to add up those figures for me. Do use the Excel formulas to do the work for you. Don't do all these calculations yourself on a calculator. Okay, and if you can't remember how to do it, perhaps have a look at some of the help stuff within Excel to see if you can work out how to do some of those things. Okay, so we've got our inflows and we've got our outflows. The final part of the task is to then work out net cash flow and therefore opening and closing balance. So net cash flow, if you remember, is the inflows take away the outflows. So in other words, for July, £75 take away £100 and 34 pence. So that's giving me minus £25.34. Okay, so I've got a negative net cash flow in July because I'm spending lots of money on equipment and I'm not selling loads of fudge in that first month. Then in the second month, my inflows £112.50, outflows £73.51. So therefore in my second month, I've got nearly £40 positive cash flow, net cash flow, and again all the way through then I've got positive net cash flow because I haven't got those outflows of buying more equipment. Okay, so it's looking like a pretty good picture. My closing balance then is my opening balance plus my net cash flow. Okay, so in the first month in July, I'm starting with no money because I've not made any money yet. And then I've got to add to that my net cash flow, which is a negative figure, which means that my closing balance is actually negative again at minus £25.34. The opening balance is always then just the previous month's closing balance. If I end July on minus £25.34, I'm then beginning August also on minus £25.34. And then I do the same thing again. So closing balance is opening balance plus net cash flow. Therefore, I've got to do minus £25.34 plus the £73.51 gives me £13.65 positive. So by August, I'm into a positive cash flow situation. Same again, my closing balance for August becomes my opening balance for September, £13.65. Add on the £28.56 net cash flow, takes me up to £42.21. That becomes my opening balance for October. Closing balance then becomes £57.71. £57.71 at the beginning of November, then becomes £79.01 at the end of November, and then finally in December £79.01 at the beginning, making lots of fudge, £150 worth of fudge, with only £92.88 of outflows, leaves me with £136.13 in the bank at the end of December. So that's what my cash flow forecast looks like. That's what you need to do. Remember, if you're doing it in Excel, don't do all the calculations manually. Do the calculations using the Excel formulae. Okay, so one last thing that you need to do for this week, and that is talk about finance. Remember, finance is how you're going to get the money to get started with your business. So what I'm saying is in the first month, I will need to spend £100.34 before getting any inflows. Okay, before I sell any of this fudge, I need to buy my ingredients, I need to buy my paper bags, I need to buy my equipment, and then I need to make the fudge. So that's going to be £100.34. Now, I mean, you could say that I could buy just some of my ingredients and make half the fudge for, what would that be, £23.22, which would bring that down. But actually, what I'm going to say is, let's assume that I'm going to be able to borrow £100 from a family member, and the advantage of borrowing from a family member is hopefully they'll lend that to me interest free. We'll forget about the 34 pence for a moment. Maybe I'll find 34 pence in my pocket somewhere, or I can perhaps buy some of the ingredients and then leave some of the ingredients to buy later. So let's just make it a nice round figure of £100. But I need to borrow all of that because of the fact that before I've made any fudge, I won't be getting any of these inflows in. Okay, and so I'm going to then aim to pay that back by the end of August. Now, you might wonder how I'm going to end up paying that back by the end of August, because look, I've only got a closing balance of £13.65 at the end of August, and you might say, well, I can only pay it back by December when I've got £136.13 in the bank. But that's forgetting the fact that actually this cash flow forecast doesn't take account of that £100 that I'm borrowing. So I'm going to change my cash flow forecast slightly now so that it does. So I've added in this line into inflows, saying I've got a £100 loan. That's an inflow because that's money coming to me in July. And so that means that my inflows change from being just £75 in July to £175. Now, if we look at this, I've got 175 inflows, £100.34 outflows. So that gives me a net cash flow of £74.66, which means that my closing balance suddenly becomes £74.66, not the minus £25 that I had before. Following that through then, by the end of August, I would then have £113.65 in the bank, not just £13.65. But what we've got to remember is £100 of that isn't actually my money. £100 of that is actually what my family have lent me. So therefore, that means that having that £113.65, I can now pay off that £100, leaving me with £13.65. I could decide to perhaps stretch it out till September until I've got a little bit more in the bank, a little bit more sort of buffer room just in case things go wrong. I could try to stretch it out even to December and say, well, by that point I've got over £100 of my own money in the bank plus the £100 that I was borrowing. But I'm going to assume I want to pay my family back as soon as possible. So here we go. I've added that in as well with an extra row in my table. So I've got borrowing the £100 in July and then paying off the loan in August, which does mean that I've then got a negative cash flow in August. But from then on, I'm in positive cash flow. And at this point then, all of that money is mine. None of it belongs to my relatives because I've already paid off my relatives with that £100. So you need to estimate your cash inflows and outflows for the first 6 months. That should be easy to do because you've already worked out those figures in previous weeks for the previous week's work. You then need to draw up a cash flow forecast. If you can, try to do that on Excel and use the Excel formulae to help you to work out the figures. Don't do it all manually by using a calculator. And then finally decide how you will finance the startup of your business. And I want you to just write a few sentences to explain how that's going to work when you expect to be able to pay back the money if you're taking out a loan. Obviously, loans aren't the only way of financing your business. You can also think about perhaps getting a shareholder to invest in your business or crowdfunding. And it will all depend really on the type of business that you're running, because some businesses are best for borrowing money. If you're only needing a small amount of money to get yourself started, quite possibly that could be using personal savings or borrowing from a family member. If you need a larger amount of money to get started, then you probably are looking at either borrowing from the bank, and remember then you'll need to pay interest on that loan, or you're looking at perhaps getting a shareholder to invest money in your business and then owning part of your business alongside you. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. Alongside this video, you'll have a Word document which tells you what you need to do this week, and I look forward to seeing your cash flow forecasts.